Hey everyone, here are some tips for a successful aquarium. First one here is doing research to find the type of animal you want to keep, so be it a fish or shrimp or crabs or whatever. For example of this video, we're just going to keep on using betas because that's my personal favorite fish here. So you do a bunch of research on fish in general, say freshwater, saltwater, and you decide, hey, I want to get myself a beta. So good. Next, you going along with the same tip here. You do a bunch more research on beta, so you find everything out on the beta that you want to buy before even going out to the pet store and buying the fish. You make sure you have all the information that you need. And my second tip here is going out and buying everything that you need before buying the fish. So again, if you're in a beta, you go out and buy your 5-gallon tank or whatever size tank you chose. And be it a kit, which are my personal favorite things to buy are kits, of course, because it comes with almost everything you need. You go out there, you buy yourself the tank, you buy yourself the lights, the heaters, the filter, the gravel, everything, all the decorations that you want, everything to set up your tank. So you go out, you buy all that stuff, you come back home, and you set it up, and you make sure it is nice and beautiful, and everything you need you already have before buying your fish. So the second tip here is buying everything that you need for that specific type of animal, in this case beta, and setting it up before, again, buying the actual beta or whatever. Third tip for successful aquariums here is make sure that tank is cycled before adding your beta or what have you to the tank. So come back or before going back out to get your fish, make sure that you cycle that tank. Depending on the size of the tank, that can take up to a month, or it can take even more. Might take a little bit less, but usually takes about a month. Again, doing a bunch of research, make sure you actually cycle the tank as it should be cycled. So third tip here is making sure your tank is cycled before buying your fish. Fourth tip is actually going out and buying the fish. Make sure you buy it from a store that has a good rep. Make sure that not only the tank that you're buying from, but all the tanks in the store don't have a ton of dead fish in them. Make sure the store is not all nasty and horrible. For example, near me, this isn't the case anymore, but one of the Petcos I used to go to near me, all the time I go in there, almost every tank would have dead fish, and they looked like they've been dead for days. All the tanks would be nasty, be algae grown over all of them. They just looked horrible. So that's the type of store you do not want to buy from. Again, recently they have been way better. Probably new management or something. But you want to make sure that the store you buy from actually has good rep, or at least the tanks look nice and healthy. Every tank is not full of dead fish or dying fish or fish that have ick all over them, stuff like that. And of course, the specific fish you guys are going to be buying, make sure those look healthy as well. So fourth tip here is just make sure you're buying a healthy animal and make sure the other fish or whatever is healthy in all the other tanks as well, not just the tank you're looking at. Because if they are unhealthy in other tanks, chances are that tank that you are actually looking at is probably unhealthy. It just hasn't gotten to the point of where the fish are dying yet. So fish are good at hiding sicknesses for the most part, unless they're covered in ick or something. Alright, then the fifth tip here is making sure you are doing, after your tank's been set up, you have your fish in there, make sure you're doing all your maintenance needs. So if you're like me and your water evaporates like nobody's business, even in my 45 here, once a week I can fill this thing up with some water. Make sure you're filling it up with treated water. Make sure that you are doing regular water changes. Do at least once a month or a few times a month or however many times you want to do a water change. So make sure you're doing your water changes as you should. Just make sure that your maintenance is up to date and keeping your tank nice and healthy and going. Make sure you're checking over your fish. Make sure they're not covered in ick or seem to be not swimming correctly. Make sure your fish are not attacking each other or whatever. Just make sure everything's doing good and make sure you're keeping up with your maintenance to make your tank nice and healthy here. Then I think this would be the sixth tip here is when you are feeding your fish, make sure that you're not overfeeding the fish, especially if you have young kids feeding them. When I used to work at the pet store years and years ago now, people would come in and go, oh, my son or daughter dumped in entire canister of food. What do I do? Well, you get that food out of there, of course. But make sure, point here is make sure that if you do let your kids feed the fish or younger people or whatever, even yourself, make sure you're not overfeeding the fish. Fish do not have very big stomachs. They say a fish's stomach is about as big as their eyeball is. So just make sure you're not overfeeding the fish. Along with that, make sure your little kids are not dumping other things into the tank. I've heard stories of kids dumping like crayons and whatnot into the tanks and just poisoning their tank. So sixth tip here is make sure you're not overfeeding the tank, and make sure your kids are not adding in things into the tank that should not be in a fish tank, such as crayons. Alright, then one more tip here. So this I think will be the seventh tip, if I can count correctly here, is making sure, and this kind of goes along for maintenance, I just didn't mention it in there, is that make sure you are also cleaning the filters on a regular basis. Again, probably at least about once a month or so, just make sure they're not getting clogged up, and make sure that they are not all nasty and covered in all the nasty stuff, all the nasty bits. So just making sure that you're doing proper filter maintenance as well as that proper tank maintenance. Guys, have any more tips, please leave them in the comments below. As always, I really do appreciate y'all watching. Do stay tuned. I am going to be, hopefully tonight, I might be changing up my 20-gallon long. I might be changing up my 45-gallon tank again here pretty soon, once I change over the 20-gallon long. So do stay tuned, and also I'm moving stuff all around. Actually, as you can see in the right-hand corner there, I moved one of my aquarium tank from the other side of the room to this side. Yeah, so stay tuned for more. I will be coming out with more videos pretty soon here. As always, I appreciate you guys. Hope you all have a good one. See you guys next time. Goodbye.